has now been around for 3 seasons, and coaches everywhere are saving time and being more efficient when it comes to scout cards. Coach Robinson from Texas says, "The thing I most enjoy is the ease of access to all the scout cards and how I can draw on them if I need to make any changes. Every coach that uses it says that it is so great to use. If you and your staff are tired of the old ways of preparing and using scout cards, check out thecoachpad.com to start enjoying Scout Team and making the 2023 season better than ever."
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have the defense coordinator at Shepherd University, Josh Kline. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well. Appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
No problem, Coach, and I appreciate you. And but first, how did you end up as the DC at Shepherd, which has become a extremely successful Division II university?
So my playing career started at Shepherd, and from high school, played for a great high school coach, Tim Ambrose, and the local school about 25 minutes away from my high school was Shepherd, and I didn't know anything about it until about 7-8 games into my senior season. Back then the only thing you know about college football is the teams on TV. So Miami, Boston College, Notre Dame, like the big schools. Started exploring around, and he helped me get to Shepherd. Played nose guard at Shepherd for Coach Monty Cater and defensive coordinators Jeff Castile and Bob Haley. And then as I finished up, Shepherd started grad school, and my wife had followed me from high school to Shepherd, and we were going to get married the following year. So it kind of worked out where I had a chance to be the first male grad school participant at Shepherd, and got my master's degree, and was kind of got into coaching. Coach Bob Haley allowed me to be the defensive line coach, and when he retired after the Final Four run in 2010, Coach Cater named me the defensive coordinator. So that's kind of my track. I have to kind of thank Coach Ambrose from Middletown for kind of creating the love of football for me back in the day. And he had two sons, Rob and Jarrett, that both coach college football. And I remember being 10 years old, running working the Middletown football camp, and Rob coming back and being an instructor, and kind of really, whatever reason, that sticks with me, and kind of gave me the, hey, I want to be a college coach one day. So that was kind of the background. It's a long story there, but that's kind of how I got into being the defense coordinator at Shepherd.
Now with that, you not only has your team had a lot of recognition of success, but you've been recognized as like Division II Defense Coordinator of the Year. You've been recognized for your success as well. Why do you think you guys have had so much success? I mean, it's been heightened the past 15 years. And like I said, capped off with another really good season this year. Why do you guys think you've had so much success, especially defensively, over the course of the past 10, 15 years?
Well, I think we're located in a great area, an hour from Baltimore, DC, and 3 hours from Philadelphia and 3 hours from Richmond. So there's a large number of student athletes that play at a high level, which has allowed us to have great players throughout all the years. And we're probably in one of the most developed parts of West Virginia in the Eastern Panhandle, which produce a lot of great players. And I think first off, it's got to be the players that have allowed us to have the success. But myself and Coach McCook, our current head coach, he came to Shepherd in 1999. So the two of us have been here at Shepherd since then. So just continuing the tradition, the way we do things here has allowed us to, kind of stay the course and not create a whole lot of change, where a lot of programs we play have had tremendous change throughout the years. So I think that's another thing. And then just being able to understand what kind of players we have, and how they learn, how fast they pick things up, and trying to make the game plan for them as simple as possible so they can play as fast and hard as possible and have the most fun that they can.
Okay. Now you mentioned kind of just evolving there. Like, I mean, and we talked a little bit about this before we came on, like your school has been a cover 3 team for the past 23 years or longer.
Yeah.
First, like, I mean, why has your school been so cover 3 heavy, say, instead of a Tampa 2 or Palms or a quarters team?
Yeah. So our first deal with defense is stop the run, and cover 3 has always allowed us to get eight men in the box, play a heavy box, be allowed to really stop and shut down run game. And as a first year player playing under Coach Castillo, and then later on with Coach Haley, it was pretty much, if we didn't stop the run, the punishment there was just so immense as a player that you're like, all right, we're going to get this run stopped. So it's kind of entrenched in our values here, but it allowed us to play, heavy box and stop the run, and it's created some simplistic ways of, teaching the guys, where you fit, how what kind of run action you're going to see, how to defend that, and then where to get yourself in coverage. I think another thing is, as time has went on, the RPO game was created, and that kind of changed what we were. But before that, we were able to get as many guys in the box and play one high and kind of be safe on that big down the field post play, and really allowed us to have a lot of success that way. Once the RPO came in, that's when all the tweaks and changes to what we do kind of started.
Now you mentioned tweaks and changes there, and we talked a little bit before, like also the splits and some of the throwing has changed that, and you're no longer purely a spot drop team either. You're more zone match, but you'll play some man match in there as well. Like, how has the offensive evolution caused you as a defense coordinator to evolve?
Yeah, so like I was saying, the RPO game just you're show and run. You got linebackers triggering. You're soft in zones. When we first originated, you sit, you buzz your feet, you bust out to your coverage zone, and now you're losing those hook players because your linebackers are read and run, and they're triggering down. So those slant windows became quite problematic there. So that was kind of the first initial thing. So now a lot of time our overhangs are going to match 2 in, and the corners are going to have to play a little harder on the outside. But that's kind of one of the first things that started. And then the splits of offensive teams they'll stretch from sideline hash to sideline hash and run 4 verts. And we saw that in a playoff game, and we had to in 2013 had to really get out of our cover 3 and go to some cover 1 and some quarters, just to be able to handle how wide the splits were, and how we just couldn't reroute and overlap well enough to defend their vertical shots down the seams, and put us in a lot of issues. And that was 2013. So that's kind of when we started, operating out of too high all the time, and then rotating, spinning down, inserting, to create different cover 3s and be a little more disguised.
Okay. Now you kind of mentioned the RPO there. It's like, and you got to play a little bit harder with your, say, hook curl, overhang defenders, whatever you want to call them. Like, how do you, I mean, you say they got most of 2 in. How do you teach that technique to your overhangs?
Yeah, so we'll vary our alignments throughout the season, and try to marry it up with different pressures and different other coverage families to try to give a little bit of disguise to start out. And then once we get in our alignment, we're going to play curl flat, or seam curl flat wheel is really our responsibility. but to handle the two in the slant, that's got to override everything else. So if we get a slant by two, that's going to override our seam curl flat wheel operation. So we get the slant by two. We're going to drive it with our overhang player to allow us to handle that with RPO action. That's going to get the mic or the will to trigger down in the run fit and open up that huge window for the offense. And we play against a phenomenal offense that has led the country in offense the last several years. And our quarterback, he's gone, which is terrible for us as a program. We got to find a new guy. He's been a 4-year starter. He's probably going to get drafted. But man, what a relief this spring that we can finally just sit back and it's not full pressure every time the guy's catching the snap. But he as well has created us to look at things, change things just because of how well that he operates that RPO game. So we, fortunate we get to see it a lot in practice and can kind of mess around and try some things in our cover 3 stuff. But to get back to the overhang, really the too hot is kind of how we refer to it as that route, whether it's a small hitch, it's a slant, and under, we're going to trigger towards that. And then once, if it's an under, we'll deliver it and push back out to the curl. If it's a slant, we're gonna melt on that, and the corner is just gonna have to play quick game rules. And if we get a slant by one, he's gonna have to drive that play and break that pass up.
Now, how much? Obvious, and this is probably a dumb question, but how much do you emphasize communication at all times? Like, and like I'll say this, like cover 2, cover 4 systems, there's communication, but I think there's a lot more with the cover 1, cover 3 systems and communication, just because of all the moving parts and all the passing of routes or canceling of passing of routes, depending on where the back is. How much and where do you and how do you focus on communication pre and post snap?
Yeah, so pre snap, we're going to identify formation, and based on what we had learned through the week, what we've shown the guys through the week, they're going to have a basic idea of, hey, these are the routes we're going to get out of these formation sets, whether it's two's closed to the field or two's open to the field. What is a split on the hash? Is it wider than the hash? Is it however that works out through our game plan throughout the week. We're going to start with that, and the players are going to identify formation and communicate to each other, possibilities of, if we get curl flat, curl wheel, if we're 4 vert type of look, they'll communicate through that as we kind of get into it. Now post snap, we're trying to be very, very loud, very verbal with in and out routes, and to help trigger guys and allow them to really hear that extra bit of communication that might put them in the right windows. But I know from playing at Shepherd, coaching at Shepherd, it gets loud in our stadium. So on the field communication sometimes is drowned out. We don't have a track, so the stands are right on top of the field, and we usually have a great crowd that gets loud when the defense is out there. So we'll practice it through the week and be loud, but sometimes that post snap, it just doesn't work out.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that your corners can play pretty hard, almost. I'm not going to say man, but almost like a man, except for shallow technique. How do you, one, that accurate statement based off what I heard, and then 2, how do you work that, or how do your DB coaches work that throughout practice?
Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty much man. So a lot of our cover 3, and I've had comments over the years from different coaches, guys that had played for us and went and coached somewhere else and came back, and they're just like, Coach, all you guys do is play man. Just one high man, you call it cover 3. But we play so much off off man technique practice wise. Our DB coaches are training that, and we'll mix up different techniques. But for the most part, if you get a vertical stem, you're really thinking some sort of man. If you're soloed, if you're too removed, we call it race to the divide. So these guys are going to kind of, we got two different techniques. We'll square pedal and really work our feet to get in the middle of the two receivers, or we'll shuffle technique and really open up and still get to the same spot. So depending on the player's ability, how well he's practiced those techniques, he can either use both or he's going to be one or the other. So we've used different ones throughout the years. But the coaches are going to train that. I mean, it's pre-practice. It's 5 minutes of Indy where they're going to work on their cover three techniques throughout practice. And this past year we played more cover four this year, just based on what we saw. But there's still a lot of carryover, especially with the squared corner technique with our cover three and our cover four. So there's a lot of crossover there. So we're able to kind of cross train that. I'm sure, and I don't know if I'm the only guy that does it with our guys, but our cover three looks like man a lot, so that we can play tight and we can, to kind of take things away. We got to train the quick game throughout the week as well. Just being able to race to that divide and then be able to trigger out of it and attack the quick game. I think the biggest thing that usually gets overlooked is our eye training, and our eyes have to be on point. We cannot look at number one receiver and think, hey, I'm playing man. It's hard for the young guys to understand that and get that, and they have to read through number two to the end man line of scrimmage to the quarterback. And I was watching a clip last night, and the guy is set up, his eyes are correct, and right before the snap he starts staring at number one, and he completely loses the quick game off of the quarterback. And if his eyes are right, he's going to be able to see quick game action, trigger on the route, and break that pass up. But those are two different things, that the quick game training and then the just our race to the divide, that we really hammer every single practice, that the coaches are. I try to steal as much Indy time as possible. I know the offensive coaches can't stand it, and they want to play team. And whether we're coming out a few minutes early to work some Indy reps, or we're we may run one rep of pursuit drill and then get into extra Indy time just so we get our techniques and fundamentals down through that week.
Now, I'll, before I hit my next question, I'll go that, like, what do you typically focus on in Indy? Is there anything that you particularly like that you do that maybe not everybody does? Like, what does your Indy look like?
So we there different times of the year, it'll vary. It's not going to be the same every day. We'll have a few crossover drills that kind of go throughout the year, but we'll stance and starts at every position to make sure the base fundamental teaching of defensive football is hammered every single day. And then after that stance and starts period, we'll get out of that, and then it's on each individual coach. So whether it's our stars coach or safeties coach or corners coach, they will get into first zone coverage, whatever the flavor of zone coverage of the week is, whether it's one of our versions of cover three that we haven't worked on in a while, or if it's our quarter stuff. But they'll work 5 minutes on their zone install, their zone teach, which I think we do a really good job with limited amount of time, where we will walk through throughout the day, whether it's at a position meeting or right before practice. We'll walk through what we're going to do in the day, what we're going to practice, what we got to see this week. And then once we get to practice, now we're jogging through it at the beginning of practice, and then in our team teach period, and then when we get to individual, now the guys, this is the third time seeing it, fourth time if you count install in the classroom, and now they're able to practice it more efficiently. It's full speed during Indy, and now there's not as much teaching during that Indy period, so we're getting really good reps. I think we've always done a good job of that, which has allowed us to maximize our time and efficiency on our techniques. But that's practice wise, that's how I think we've maximized how we've done it through the past, which may be a little unique compared to some. I know that everybody's racing to get to different team segments, and I know as a defense, we're trying to slow it down to try to get the individual teaching. So when we do get to the team periods, it's full speed and full go, and everybody's having a good time, and we're not having mental busts during team periods.
Okay. Now, one of the other things I want to ask you is the prevalent air raid play mesh. How do you handle mesh? Like, obviously your overhangs are passing or carrying and then passing the shallows most of the time, unless they have, depending on what some of your calls are. But how do you typically handle it? Because I know, because I've watched some high school coaches, I know whether there's cover 3, doesn't really matter what they're in. And I watched one playoff game this year where a team just got kind of just whacked with mesh. How do you kind of handle mesh? And I know that varies depending on the game plan and who you're seeing, but just generally, how do you focus on that?
Yeah, so I'd say over the last 2 years, we've probably seen mesh more so when we've had cover 4 calls, which is a little bit different teaching. But in our cover 3, we're always going to be a too high look unless formation condenses down to a nub or a wing set. But we'll always start in a too high, and we're either going to cloud us the strong side, weak side, or insert one of the 3 safeties to make the other overhang, to get their 4 zones. And with doing that, it allows us to have good eyes on the routes that are coming out. I think the guy that's dropping in or we're rotating, we can kind of see the mesh start, and we do a good job of not, back in the day, we used to, you get a crosser, you're trying to knock his head off, knock him off his feet, get him on the ground. And in camp, everybody's trying to do that, get the big knockout shot at their first week on campus. And so we've kind of got out of that mold to allow these routes to just do what they do. Ball snap, they're going to cross, they're going to go under. Don't trigger down on it, get your depth, let it settle out. And then we understand there's four underneath defenders that we can expand and carry. We'll carry until we can pass it to the next defender, like you were saying. But the biggest teaching point right now is, hey, we're not going to trigger on that under. Let it go to the next man. Understand where your help is, whether you got inside, outside help or help on both sides, and then defend it that way. But I think dropping in out of the too high has allowed us some success there, where now we're seeing where the mesh is. Maybe they're running an OTB from outside that kind of is the point part of the mesh that now the free safety can kind of see and trigger on.
Okay. Now with that, like you mentioned a little bit, some of that's disguise, but what was, because you talked, before we came on, you guys back in the late 90s were a 4-4 cover 3 team. That's who you were. That's who you've been. But what was why the switch to the 2-eye stuff? Was it so you could play the core stuff? Was it so you could hide some of your cover 3 stuff? Why run your cover 3 stuff out too high? Obviously college is advanced to where you need some deception, but what other incentives were there?
Yeah, so there's it was some of the things we were seeing that we had to get into some 2-eye to start quarters. And way back in the 2010s, started watching TCU and studying Gary Patterson and kind of seeing some of that evolution, which, you know, suggesting that to the old D coordinator, he was like, yeah, thanks, but we're good with this cover three. So it was just something that I had studied and, you know, kind of wanted to get into the quarters family. So that was one reason to allow it to, you know, allow us to get into that. And then just the variety of cover three that we can play now from a 2-high structure. And, playing 1-high cover three is still quality football and you can still get a lot of work out of it. You just have so much disguise with the ability to run different pressure, quarters coverage, and now, you know, 5-6 different cover threes that we operate with. But I think that's the main reason, just to have more variety, more disguise to just the structure. So that, you know, we're not out there and everyone sees, all right, the 1-high, it's cover three or it's cover one. And this is the play, so that, you know, offenses get to practice that one play all week and get really good at it. And, you know, every once in a while that, you know, they're going to win and we're going to lose. But we might as well be more varied so that they have to practice more schemes and it's not just one play or 2 plays that kind of beat that look.
Okay. Now, the last question I got for you, because we talked a little bit beforehand, and you said you're more zone match than man match. You're not. I mean, nobody is really true like country spot cover three anymore. You're either pretty much zone or man match. Why more zone match than man match? Is it just a time thing? Is it just how you like to play deep? Like, why do you do more zone over man match?
We were always spot drop, like country cover three, and had no issues with it until the RPO game showed up, and then we kind of changed things and started going to some more zone match and allowing us to have success that way. And then just a limited amount of time, just trying to teach zone match, man match, and then multiple different coverages throughout a season. And that we just felt like there was too much for the players to take everything in and be really great at everything. So we chose to stay with zone match and really kind of stay out of some of the man match. But you know, to just make it a little bit easier, so the kids got one path, one thought. This is how we'll do it, and now we'll play cover 6, cover 4, and our other stuff. But this is how we'll play cover 3.
Okay. Well, coaches, one, make sure you give Coach a follow on Twitter. All that stuff will be in the bio and so forth in the show notes as normally. If you want to check out any spot of this, you can just check out the show notes. It's all timestamped. Like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. And check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Otherwise, that is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.